All right, hello everyone, and welcome today to what's going to be another episode of The Verdict. I am Spraying Pro 1000. Today we're going to talk about Sonic Frontiers. And Sonic Frontiers is basically the next 3D Sonic game. I know that that usually gets met with a lot of groans and a lot of oh gods, but I actually really did end up enjoying Sonic Frontiers. So, the basic general story behind Sonic Frontiers is that Sonic and his friends end up trapped on these islands called the Starfall Islands. And there's a bunch of different small creatures here, that are running around. They're trying to, relive their past, find happiness, find, basically free themselves and find something, fulfilling for themselves. At the same time, you have Eggman who's coming here for his own nefarious deeds, and he's brought along this mysterious AI that's allowed him to interface with all these different terminals around the island. So what this game ends up being about is Sonic gets trapped here. He gets the ability for him to enter this digital cyberspace, right? He can enter it and he could run around. He could do different things in it, and this basically serves as your typical levels for this game, right? Now, this game has your usual amount of levels. There's 4 worlds effectively for you to get through in this game. Each one of these levels borrows heavily from previous Sonic games. Maybe a couple of them are unique, but they're mostly like remixes of old Sonic levels with big, heavy time trials. The goal of the game is to get enough tokens to unlock and save your friends to progress the story of each island forward, while at the same time also progressing and grabbing tokens that will allow you to unlock more levels, which will allow you to repeat the process, right? There's a bunch, and then ultimately you need to do this so you can unlock Chaos Emeralds to fight the big bad of each area, which will allow you to progress to the next area. So initially at the start, the game opens up. It's supposed to be Sonic in the open world, right? A lot of franchises have had this moment, right? And I think that for what it tries to do, I think Sonic Frontiers definitely accomplishes it, more or less. I think that there's a good amount of variety in the open world. They put, springs, they put different things that you could use. There's like mini segments where you enter 2D, you could run along things in parkour, platform, you could homing attack. I think that the one thing that they should have given Sonic is more of his like original movement abilities, like the bouncy ball and things like that. If you're in a 2D segment, there should be a button that lets you free yourself from it, so you don't just have to either complete it or run out of it the other way. But getting around the open world was actually rather fun. There's things that you could do. You have a boost ability, which is something I think that a lot of recent Sonic games have done. I haven't really played a lot of recent Sonic games, but yeah, you get the general idea. And they let you freely go around and do areas in whichever way you want. Usually there's very few exceptions where they block you off from being able to do stuff. If you collect, you can upgrade Sonic by finding different fruits that you can then give to these statues, and then the statues will upgrade your attack. They'll upgrade your defense, your speed, your ring capacity. I found that ring capacity and speed were kind of just like not really that vital towards the end of the game, even at any point in the game. It was really mostly your attack and your defense, especially your attack, which basically allows you to one or two shot, enemies, or one or two cycle, I guess I should say. There's big enemies roaming the open world. There's smaller enemies running around. And once you get into your like digital cyberspace levels, these play more like your similar levels from previous games. Now, I will say they are a lot shorter. So what they're gonna have to do is ultimately make up for in length with quantity. I believe there's something like 36 levels in the game, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, across the 4 different worlds. So, admittedly, I wish that there was maybe a few, like one more world with extra areas or something, just to kind of pad it out just a little bit more. At least I would say that the game does not overstay its welcome. It has a pretty good story. The story is pretty well spaced out. I just wish that maybe each world had like a couple more levels, even if they were originals or things like that. And that's cool because, for me, I'm mostly a 3D Sonic fan, so I don't really know a lot of the 2D Sonic worlds and levels. But it was cool to, like, see all these different levels play out, you know what I mean? It was cool to be able to say, oh, look, that's the thing from Sonic Adventure 2. Or, oh, that's the thing from, I haven't played Sonic Heroes in ages, but you know what I mean. Like Sonic 1 or Sonic Adventure 1 and things like that. And, even as someone who's not a fan of 2D Sonic, the 2D Sonic levels were pretty good in this game. I think that they definitely try to appeal to both audiences in this game. With most Sonic games, there's like usually a divide between the fan base of, hey, here is our 2D fans and our 3D fans, let's try to make a game that appeals to both. Obviously, this is going to lean more towards the 3D because we're running around in a 3D plane and a 3D environment most of the time, but I still think they try to do their best in that regard, and I could respect that. So they did a good job in that regard. So as for the gameplay is pretty solid, pretty tight. There's a little bit of the usual Sonic glitchiness, nothing too crazy, nothing too awful. I had a lot of fun. You know, some of the levels are very challenging, very frustrating, but at the same time, you know, getting the gold in all the levels was really fun. I think it was something that was, you know, pretty good to do, which is why my only complaint is that I wish there were a couple more, you know, to be able to play out and mesh it out. The music in this game is outstanding. They do such a good job in this game with the music for each level. I actually really liked it. You know, it's like techno, it's very EDM, it's very cool, very fun. Performance-wise, this game has fidelity mode, or I'm sorry, graphics mode, and I think in performance mode. It's called something different every game. You know, there's like a quality or a graphics mode and a performance mode. Set it to performance mode, it was so good as soon as I set it to performance mode. Because before I was playing on graphics mode, you know, I'm not used to checking out a lot of these things, so that's just me personally. But yeah, so story is pretty good, gameplay is pretty good, right? Music and graphics are good, right? So the biggest complaint I think I have for this game, and also there's a lot in here if you're a Sonic fan, right? If you've played some of the old Sonic games, you've done a lot of the old Sonic things, right? They reference a lot, right? They reference Adventure 1, they reference Adventure 2, they might have even referenced a couple more games. You know, it's not required reading, but at the same time, it is cool to see that they have a game that's very in touch with the fans. So that's really ultimately what I would say about this game, is that it's a game that does really well getting in touch with its core fan base and its core audience. But I have to say that, again, for $60, which is what I bought this game at, there wasn't really like a ton here, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't like 2000, you know, this isn't like 2008, right? This is a game released in 2022. So I'd say that the biggest point of contention I have for this game is that it really is more like a $40 game slapped into a $60 game. Maybe, again, it's perfectly paced for like a $30 to $40 game, right? At $60, I feel they would have need to extend it a little more. But I'm hesitant to say that because, you know, you don't want a game to enter that padding territory, right? You don't want a game to enter that, oh, here's 2 more levels, we don't really have much to do with the story. So I feel like it's in this weird limbo space of it's really good at what it does for like $30 to $40. But at the same time, if you flip it, it's not enough for $60. So what would I give Sonic Frontiers? I'm actually going to give it a good score. I'm going to give it an 85. I think that it does a good amount of everything. If you're a Sonic fan, or if you're just looking for a good old school platformer, you know, it's got that good thing. It's got the grinding, it's got the speed, it's got the time trials, it's got some difficulty, right? So if you're a Sonic veteran, this might not be so difficult, right? I was able to grasp a lot of the levels with no problem. There's a couple things I kind of wish that they didn't change, right? Like, they gave Sonic a whole bunch of offensive moves. However, I kind of wish that Sonic himself had more, you know, more mobility. I feel like only being able to use the homing attack whenever there's a lock-on is a little bit lame, because in previous Sonic games, you could just use the homing attack to get around. But, you know, small things like that don't detract from the whole experience, right? That's like a more minor thing. I just think that's in this weird limbo zone of being good and enjoyable, and it's polished enough that I actually really like it, right? But I think all these open world, you know, old school mascots going fully open world, you know, is definitely going to be one of those like weird moments in gaming. And I think Sonic handled it pretty well, all things considered. You know, I know like most Sonic games are not that great or are very glitchy, but this game I think was like the good mix of of the goods and the bads to leave a good impression on me. So I actually really like Sonic Frontiers. So I would give it an 85 out of 100. It's got just the right amount of everything to land it at a decent spot. Maybe if there was a little bit more stretching of things around, then maybe I would say, all right, we could, you know, it's worth a little more. We could raise it up a bit. But that said, it's got a good story. If you could snatch this game on a sale, I definitely recommend it. So, all right. And with that, I am clocking out.